and welcome to the special sponsored feature on CNN IBN Goa, a case for mining. Mining operations in Goa were ordered to be halted by the Supreme Court in September last year. A third of Goa's population is working in the mining industry and has been adversely affected by this ban. In the next half hour, we look at the ground realities. Joining me in this discussion, my esteemed panel, Mr. P.K. Mukherjee, MD, Sasagoa, Mr. A.K.D. Jadhav, former Secretary, Ministry of Mines, and Mr. K.P. Niyati, environmental economic expert. Welcome, gentlemen. My first question goes to you, Mr. Jadhav. You, in your tenure, played a key role in formulating the national mineral policy in 2008. In Goa, what has gone wrong according to you and what has worked?
Well, what actually happened in Goa was that in 2005, it almost got hit by the Chinese whirlwind, so to speak. Things were going on quite smoothly at about 20-25 million tons per year. And then there was a surge in Chinese demand when they found that the typical iron ore extracted from Goa, which was 80% in the form of fines, that was something which they could deal with. But until then, there was barely any market for fines. And as a result of that, mining scene changed somewhat. A large number of inoperable leases, which were until then not in operation, they suddenly found sublessees, and the Chinese were prepared to pay a pretty top dollar for it. Mm-hmm. So what was being sold for about $15-20 started commanding $60-70. Now, as a result of that, suddenly there was a hype in mining activity. And in the melee, so to speak, the regulatory environment, the regulatory arrangements were couldn't quite match up to the requirements. And as a result of it, some things happened which should not have happened. And then naturally that has impacted the whole industry.
Mr. Mukherjee, mining and working in the mining industry is the primary source of livelihood of a third of Goa's population. Now they are jobless. How are they coping? Has any organization, whether non-governmental organizations or the mining fraternity or the government, offered a solution to these people who are suddenly out of work?
You see, there are, other than mining people who are directly working under the company, there are transport sectors, road transport as well as river transport, that is barges. And for this road transport sector, there are repair workshops, mechanics, tire shops, spare parts dealers. Similarly, for the barges, there are barge drivers, sailors, similarly barge repair yards, their employees, and so on and so forth. And ultimately the port. The port is a government port basically. So port is looking for subsidy from the government, from their ministry, to keep up their expenses. Mining companies, many of the companies, other than a few handful of 2-3 people, they have either retrenched or laid off the people. Some companies like us, Sasagoa, we are borrowing more and more to keep our bare minimum things going on. Government is trying to help various people through in the form of so-called doles. So this is the way people are getting this thing. But the point is that, this way it cannot continue for long. Just on the basis of help or loans and this, or some banks are trying to defer their NPA writing off. So this way it cannot continue. Economic activity has to come back.
Mr. Niyati, a blanket ban on mining was imposed by the Supreme Court. Was there no option really when everybody knew that the economic impact will be huge?
In fact, irrespective of the impact, there is no reason why one should take extreme decision. There is always a solution. Solution is very simple. Let's get into the basic root cause of those problems which led to the closure of the mines. What was the root cause? Now, there cannot be such a serious root cause that all the mines, as a blanket, have to be closed down. There can never be.
Mr. Niyati, what is your take on the good and the bad examples that the mining fraternity has set on the environmental front during the 60 years of its existence?
Well, there are bad examples as well, like how to manage waste dumps, how do you regulate wastewaters going out, particularly the stormwater drain, providing garland drains, settling ponds. This has gone on. But I personally believe there are many regulatory agencies which could have done their job. For whatever reason, that turned the blind eye. There are a plethora of regulatory agencies. DMGs in the state, you have IBN, you have pollution control boards, you have regional office of MOEF, you have conservators of forests. Everybody is there. Now, if there are bad things which were going on, could have been very easily stopped. Right? And let me also say this. Merely because there were bad things, which also happened in the industry, in the manufacturing side. I'll cite you just one statistics. In 1992, of the 17 highly polluting category industries, right, 1,500 of them were not complying with the environmental regulations. That's 92 for you, right? In a matter of 8 years, the number came down to just 24, and all of them were closed.
Mr. Jadhav.
It's necessary to distinguish between these two sections. One of the old established mining industry in Goa, and then these the newly revived mining mining leases. It's in these newly revived mining leases which came up at a very short notice and which are focused on just this particular aspect of meeting the Chinese demand in whatever way it can.
Right.
That's where these problems have come up, and the regulatory arrangements, the IBM and the DMG, they could not quite match up to the needs. As a result of this, huge push from all sides, this export started in a big way. But it's important to distinguish between the two, because the regular mining industry was going on for a long time, and it's a heart of Goa's economy. It plays a very serious role.
True.
And it does a lot of work on the humanitarian side also. So all that we cannot just lose sight of because of this. It's a fact that this has to be dealt with, and because of this, that environmental degradation has happened very rapidly.
Mr. Mukherjee, you've been in the industry for the last 25 years. The Shah Commission's allegations of rupees 35,000 crores loot, how do you respond to that?
No, I think Shah Commission has concluded these based on their calculation of mining outside the lease area, and some places encroachment into other lease areas. But importantly, Shah Commission has said, which is not very much told anywhere, that they didn't have the expert people for them to assess, and to this figure itself, they have told that it should be calculated based with the help of experts who are acquainted with the ground realities and with equipments like 3D laser equipments. So with this sort of rider, this 35,000 crore itself is a very, very big question mark. But leaving it aside, what has happened that so far encroachments is concerned, the latest equipment which is called Differential Global Positioning Survey System, DGPS, which is also recognized by the Government of India, IBN and all. So already approved agencies are there in the country who are experts in their fields, who are approved by the IBM, who are approved by the state governments. So those people have already completed their DGPS surveys of individual leases, and the result will be issued now. And I'll not be surprised if 35,000 crore becomes zero because of that. And admittedly, there are no cases of allegations of one miner is talking about other miners have encroached in my area, unlike many other parts of this country.
Well, let's slip into a short break here, but when we come back, we look at the possible solutions. You're watching Goa, a case for mining. Welcome back. You're watching this special sponsored feature on CNN IBN Goa, a case for mining, where we are discussing the mining ban in Goa and its adverse effect on its people and the economy. Mr. Jadhav, if I can put this question to you, the ban has had an impact not just on the mining industry, but all the allied industries as well. How do you see that?
Well, yes, that's true. Once you ban a particular activity, then it has economic activity, then it has an impact on both upstream as well as downstream. And that's what has happened here. Now, upstream, for example, mining machinery. There's a market for mining machinery, so the machinery manufacturing units would be adversely affected. Downstream, of course, it's very considerable. The transportation sector, as Mr. Mukherjee was saying earlier, there are a large number of trucks which were carrying ore backward and forward. So the transport-related industries, the auto repairs, tire repairs, a whole lot of others who find employment, direct and indirect, in this industry. If you go down to the ports, within the ports there are other port-related activities. You have these clearing and forwarding, you have chandlers, you have custom house agents, you have labor, loading and unloading. All these people are affected. Then going still further, in Goa there is this barge owners association. The draft at the port is not very good. It's not very great. So the ships can't come in. So the way they do it is that they load the iron ore on the barges, and the barges carry them to the ships and then bring them back, and then they get back. So this whole barge thing, and they're mostly in the SME sector. Some of the barges are individually owned. The same thing with the trucks; they're individually owned. So all these are affected, and many of these have picked up loans from banks. So then the banks are affected. So there's a spin-off on all sides.
Mr. Mukherjee, a lot of Goa's infrastructural development, be it school, colleges, hospitals, have been helped by the mining fraternity. They are a huge part of not just the economic fabric, but also the social fabric. How is that likely to get affected?
Some of Goan miners have distinguished themselves right from the very beginning, 3-4 generations before and even today, from their other counterparts of this country, that there is a huge interweaving of the society with the mining. All the villagers are involved with the trucks. Initially, the loans were given. And any infrastructure you talk about, whether it is schools, whether it is colleges, whether it is medical infrastructure, even the fast 4-lane bridge of Goa was constructed by the mining companies. Of course, somebody can say that mining companies wanted it in their own interest, but that is a public asset has been created. So you look at anything. We have not created any airport there, but all other roads. The most of the village roads were contributed by the mining companies. And definitely once the coffer is, there is no inflow. So everything is getting impacted. And I believe because of the people are not getting enough money, there are already lack of children in the schools and there are other impacts that already started showing, like theft and burglaries are going up. So these are all impacts will come, and the more days goes like this, the more impact will be very, very eminently seen.
If we look for possible solutions, Mr. Niyati, how have other countries set an example and dealt with their issues pertaining to mining? We talk about Brazil, Australia, Canada. How have they worked?
No, in fact, there are no such decisions there like on-off. Point number one. Point number two, if there are illegalities, non-compliances, they are immediately dealt with, and until unless you come back on the legal path, you are not allowed to proceed. So even if there is a halt, purely temporary.
But in India, do you think, and specifically in Karnataka, Goa, do you think some kind of regulation can be put instead of a blanket ban? And also, what about the other bodies that are supposed to monitor and regulate the entire activity?
Very well said. In fact, laws are already there. You don't have to reframe, come up with new regulations. It's not required. It's a question of getting those laws implemented. If that happens, I don't think there would be any illegality. The last point that I thought I must make, which is, if you look at Delhi, any young child who is brought up in Delhi, उनसे पूछिए कि दूध कहाँ से आता है? मदर डेयरी से आता है. बिजली कहाँ से आती है? पावर प्लांट से आती है. अरे भाई, बिजली आएगी कहाँ से जब तक कोयला नहीं आएगा? कार आप जिसमें बैठते हैं, यदि आयरन ओर से स्टील नहीं बना तो आप कार कैसे चलाएंगे? I mean, we are fundamentally missing, and partly I must also blame miners that they fail to make people realize how important their role is in making the lives better off of every citizen.
Mr. Mukherjee, your final thoughts. What is the way forward as a fraternity, as a mining fraternity, and coming from that industry? How do you look forward to comply if regulations are put, and do you think there is a way forward?
I think absolutely there is a way forward, definitely. Post these legal things, recourses are gone through, and then ultimately you are allowed to work. But going forward, I think as an industry, particularly in Goa, very cohesive industry, we need to look as an industry body a sustainable mining initiative we have to take. Previously, it was all we are taking the initiatives individually. I think now, as a industry itself, we have to take the sustainable mining initiative. We have already started working proactively with an international firm on that, and we'll be doing our own code of conduct. And in future, any such irregularity or irregularities, whatever the other esteemed panel members were talking, then they have to fall on the side. At least a red flag we have to show. And sustainable mining, when I talk, I do not talk only about the environment definitely, but when we talk about intergenerational equity, sustainable mining, we need to invest continuously in exploration. Exploration will bring more and more reserves and resources, and that's how the next generation of our people will be assured of the mineral resources. At the same time, when we talk about biodiversity, mining is one of the rare industry which can bring back biodiversity. There are cases in the whole world that where biodiversities have been brought back. And it is not that one species versus one species. It is net positive. We can mining, there are hundreds of instances in the world, including in Goa, where we can demonstrate that we have brought back the biodiversity in a net positive manner. So that is the only way to go forward.
With that, we come to the end of the show. I thank you all for sparing your time. I hope in the near future some solution or intervention is brought forward, because people of Goa are actually getting affected, not just the economy. Thanks for watching this special program.